Okay, hey guys, I'm doing a video upstairs today because Jamie's home. I'm doing it on a Sunday because we just got back from Bali, so she's downstairs watching TV. So I was thinking on this while I was on my holiday in Bali, and I was like, I'm starting to run out of topics to sort of dig into in a way that I think will be helpful. I think once we've talked about calories and overcoming objections and mini cuts and all those kind of things, we start to get the broad strokes together. But I'm thinking in Bali about like some of the little things that contribute to health while dieting will also make dieting a little bit easier to do. And I was thinking about a couple of things popped into my mind. So caffeine, fiber, and water were the sort of the three things that I sort of popped into my mind as things that can be utilized and should be utilized in some instances to promote health and well-being. Before we get into that though, how did my fat loss and dieting go while in Bali? Well, tracked the first 2 or 3 days I was there as best I could, but then just sort of had to go a little bit eyeball-y. Because of the hot weather, beer is sort of the drink of choice, but I don't love that obviously because it's full of calories, but was mindful that I was on a holiday, so I just sort of tried to fill up on meat and carbs at breakfast, and tried to keep my fats as low as possible, and then basically didn't eat for the rest of the day. I just had protein bars and protein shakes and alcohol, and then would have a big dinner comprised of mostly, meats and I guess meats were the focus. And then just tried to do as many steps as we could do in the day. But I mean, it was a holiday. I wasn't there to necessarily be thoroughly strict. So I've put on a few kilos. I was sort of tempted to come back and do a mini cut and all that kind of stuff. But I think for the time being, I can merely have a few low days here and there and stick to the plan, which was to have a few months off, spend the next probably 2 or 3 months at maintenance, probably something like 5 or 6 weeks at maintenance, 5 or 6 weeks maybe in a surplus, and just sort of increase my non-exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT, which is a major contributor to metabolism. So basically get my body moving again, get my body temperature up, get training hard. I want to try to build some strength and stuff like that, maybe build a little bit of muscle mass. But just take a break from dieting and the stresses that brings with food focus, food selection, constantly feeling hungry, tired, run down, all those kind of things. So we'll see how we go. I haven't weighed myself since I got back, but I imagine I'm sort of 92, 93, maybe lower. So we'll see. Bit soggy, bit of a spillover, but I think after a few low days and training, I'll be fine. Okay, so how can water, fiber, and caffeine help during a cut? So firstly, I would say that caffeine, particularly towards the end of my last cut, I was leaning into caffeine quite heavily. Now this is obviously recommendations for healthy individuals and stuff like that. So if you have any contraindications that, affect your ability to take caffeine, both physiological and psychological, this is not meant for, It's not meant for medical purposes. It's just me talking, right? So obviously consult your doctor and stuff like that. But if you can ingest caffeine, if you do ingest caffeine, stepping it up to at a slow pace to levels that you find don't mess with you too much in terms of gut, anxiety, and the side effects of caffeine can help to fuel training sessions, particularly if you're in a mini cut, like an aggressive cut, or if you're in a pretty deep calorie surplus to, because you've been doing it for a certain period of time. I was really leaning on caffeine going into the trip. So my calories were on average something like 1900, and I was working, 14, 15-hour days every day, and I needed something to keep me on the clock. Work doesn't care that I'm low calorie. My partner doesn't care that I'm low calorie. I mean, she does, but, mostly work they're not interested in that. So recommendations are something like 4 to 6 milligrams per kilo body weight. You can go a little bit higher. I would just use as needed. So what I would tend to do in the morning was make sure I had some carbs an hour or two before workout, and then I would have a coffee with 1 to 4 teaspoons of instant coffee. This is Woolworths Sport, the cheapest brand instant coffee there is. And then that would fuel my workout, and then maybe I would have another scoop or 2 or 3, like, over the course of the day as needed. Now, before the immediate holiday, I was having sort of 2 or 3 scoops in the morning, 2 or 3 scoops at lunch, and then 2 or 3 scoops for my afternoon shift. I know many people of you that may seem like a lot, and many more that's going to seem like not very much. Like I said, as needed. Don't overdo it, but as long as you're tracking around the 4 to 6 milligrams per kilo body weight, most cans of Red Bull and all that will have an idea, and there's calculators that you can look online that'll give you a rough estimation of like what your instant coffees or what your shots of coffee from the bulk coffees that you get roughly entail. But it can stimulate, it can give you the energy, and it can reduce the feeling of hunger, as well as allow you to train harder just due to, increased energy, and I believe it lowers RPE too. But I think that's in endurance athletes. But you will still get some, even if it's placebo, effect during training. So that's caffeine. Highly recommended as just a supplement to help you through and to lean on when you're dieting, but then to back off when you finish. Water is useful in the sense that it can help fill you up. I mean, it can increase the rate of gastric emptying, so it can actually make you feel a little bit more hungry. Did I say it makes you hungry? It makes you fuller, but it can increase gastric emptying, so it can make you more hungry in the long term. But it's something that can help with just feelings of hunger, and obviously it will help keep you hydrated, which will help keep you training harder and thinking clearer and all those kind of things. About 2 to 2.3 litres a day for women, and anywhere from 2.5 to 4 for guys. Typically I recommend like the 2 to 2.5 for girls, maybe a bit more, and guys I'm like straight up to 3.5 to 4.5. Like I'm just like, hyponatremia, that is like drinking too much water and getting an electrolyte imbalance, is incredibly rare. So most people aren't drinking enough water, and certainly almost no one is drinking too much water. But keep in mind, obviously, if you are up around the 4, 5, 6 litre a day consistently, you will need to focus on electrolyte, minerals, vegetables, fruits, which you should be anyway. So that one's pretty straightforward, pretty easy, but don't underestimate how something like putting caffeine together with a bit of water can help offset some of the diuretic effects. Look, I know that a lot of the research now is showing that the diuretic effect of caffeine is small, and so having a coffee will actually offset the fluid that you lose from a coffee. If you're having caffeine pills and stuff like that, maybe it's a little different, but I find, anecdotally, when I drink a lot of coffee, I just tend to drink a little bit less water. I don't know why that is. Maybe self-perception or like self-awareness is reduced, and like I said, as RPE is decreased during training, so maybe there's a little bit of like, just decreased awareness of decreased body awareness, but that's all speculation. Point is, make sure you're drinking water, make sure you're having your caffeine, and like I said, proportion that to roughly how deep you are in a cut. Like I'm at maintenance, so I would just be having caffeine. I'll actually try and reduce my caffeine intake to increase sensitivity, and also because I'll have carbs now on calories, so I won't need it as much. And finally, fiber. Now, I've seen some health and fitness pros, particularly in the evidence-based community, talking about fiber and stuff lately, and look, it is one of those things that, like, I can understand coaches and stuff who don't necessarily focus on it, because you're just trying to get people to eat their calories, their macros, all that stuff. But it is important, and it will make you feel more full, it will help keep you regular, and it will just, it's also a pretty good indicator of like the quality of the foods that you're eating. If you're eating a high processed, low vegetable, low fruit, potentially low carbohydrate diet, then you may be running low on fiber, which, you know, again, like periods of low fiber may be okay, but ultimately we want to use it as a tool to facilitate, you know, flushing out your system and helping you with, you know, your intestinal health, gut health, and all that kind of stuff, but also assisting with fullness and the quality of diet. So while it is down the list of things that I do look at, I do look at it. And I think I've only ever had one client tell me she has too much fiber, and she'll know who she is, and she said it recently. And that's funny because I was like, shit, what do I even do to tell somebody to not eat more, like, and eat less fiber? It's just like such a not, like, common thing. I was going to say regular. But, yeah, like, if you're finding that you're eating too much and you're getting constipated or bowel issues or something like that, then there are other options you can make. But primarily, having a cut, like, and don't underestimate when you're in a cut, when your calories are low, a piece of fruit, like obviously things like spinach, kale, broccoli, any vegetable really are going to be high in fiber, thus highly satiating and good for you. So make that a priority. And that's, I mean, now we're talking about stimulants to reduce hunger, fiber to reduce hunger, water reduce hunger. I mean, these things sound like they're the small buckets, they're the small things, but you start, like, at least I found, when I started to get to that real low calorie place, when I was not happy, not comfortable, you know, making changes, little things did make a lot of difference. If I could have some caffeine, like, I may have been tired, I may have been run down, I may have been not fed, but at least the caffeine would give me the energy to be a human being, basically. And those things help. And again, having just a sliced up chilled apple a day and stuff, like on top of my regular foods and stuff, were just little treats that contain water, that contain fiber, that contain carbs, that were really refreshing and nice. And I think that's sort of the thing that people don't really focus on when they're cutting is small things become big things, and that is obviously the negative in terms of, like, you know, increasing your steps and activity and how hard you're training and all those kind of things. But, like, the small things with diet, with your water and all those kind of things will provide relief. Going to bed a little bit earlier, all those kind of really small things that you can do will provide relief. So again, sorry I haven't done a video in a little while. I'm struggling for topics and also time. Hopefully now that I'm back from holiday, I will have a little bit more time or a little bit more energy perhaps to do a few more of these more regularly. I'm sure there's always stuff to talk about. I like talking, as you can tell. So if there's any questions, thoughts, queries, criticisms, notes, tag them in the video or message me or anything. And if there's any other topics you feel like you want discussed, let me know. I'm happy to do meta issues, like maybe like topics around and related to health and fitness and sport. Like the trans issue in sport has been something that I've been, like, if I was still writing blogs, would be probably an issue I would get involved with. But I think for the purposes here, keeping it localized, practical things that will help the everyday person is going to be more beneficial than just me wanking a philosophical about, honestly, an issue that I don't think I'm necessarily qualified to speak on, nor should I. So if you've got ideas or topics, let me know. Otherwise, have a great one, kids, and I'll chat to you soon.